Welcome to Activations with JJ Ascension Message. In today's episode, we will be talking about the themes of releasing programs of solitary ascension, processing and healing through dreams, inner child and inner teenager healing, and finally, the importance of trust and surrender as we move forward on our ascension journey. I'm excited to go through these topics with you, and I cannot wait to dive in. So let's go. Hello, my dear soul family. I am thrilled to be here with you for another podcast episode. Extremely grateful to those who have been listening to this for a while, who've been following the podcast for a while, and also want to extend a warm welcome to you if this is the first time you've ever connected with me. I'm always excited to grow this family and to grow this community. As we dive into our topics for today, it's been really interesting because I obviously did an April monthly energy update. I do that every single month. And 4 themes came through when I channeled that particular message. But as I was preparing for today's Ascension message, which is more like just a weekly update usually, I actually had several other themes come through. And you know what? Those themes did not just come through as I was channeling this. They have come through in sessions. And so what's been really fascinating is experiencing these themes one after the other where I'll have like maybe 3 or 4 sessions in a row where this comes up. And I know I'm like, oh, I got to put that on the podcast. So I have a little notepad next to me when I'm doing my readings and my sessions. And I say, okay, this seems to be a theme. I can tell Spirit's trying to say this needs to be addressed. So we have some fun ones coming up for today. There's a little bit of overlap with the April monthly themes, but there's still some new things. All right, something else really fun that I am going to add to spice up this particular podcast episode is I have brought in my partner, Michael Brighton, who I am actually co-facilitating a workshop with. This is the first one we've ever done together. It'll be happening this Sunday, April 16th. And the topic of the workshop is conscious relationships. It's an hour and a half long. It's really the tip of the iceberg, but it will absolutely give you a taste for the way we work together. Now, if you want to hear me talk a little bit about my partner and how we complement each other and our energetic contracts and all that, you might want to come into that because I'm going to speak a little bit to that. I'm sure a lot of you out there are wondering like, wow, who is JJ's partner? I have a lot of friends that tell me I'm really fascinated to know like who you have a soul contract with. Now, the fun thing about us in particular is that we've been together for over 25 years and we have several children. And in spite of and despite and all of that, our different like ascension journeys, paths, growth that we've gone through over that amount of time, because as you all know, a person in that length of time is going to go traverse multiple timelines, have lots of just different awakenings, rebirths, and we've held space for each other all the while, and it hasn't always been easy, right? It hasn't always been easy, but we have gained a lot of wisdom and a lot of insights, and we enjoy talking to people about how to navigate a lot of different things, including relationships. And so we're going to drop in on Sunday, April 16th, and talk a little bit more about that. In addition, what I mentioned in order to spice up this podcast, I actually interviewed Michael so that you can get a feel for what his sort of realm of expertise is and his thoughts on some of this subject. And so you'll see that at the end of this podcast episode, I'm adding a little clip from our interview. So that'll be fun for you to experience. You'll also notice that I'm going to start something new with this episode, and that is I have decided to open up a Q&A section at the end of every podcast episode that's an Ascension message, where I will take questions that have been submitted to me in one of 2 ways. You can either submit them on Apple Podcasts by leaving a rating, and then in the review comments, you'll just add your question in there. Or if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can just drop your question in, and that will be in consideration for these Q&As that I'm going to add on to the end of my podcast episodes. So the first one will happen next week, not this week, because I still haven't gotten anybody submitting them because they didn't know they could do that. but I feel like it's going to be a really fun way for me to interact with you and get those questions answered. In addition, if you have a lot of questions that you've been dying to ask, I also am opening up something new that's an offering. I'm not going to have the details out yet, but keep on the lookout for a gathering that is strictly related to questions and answers, where I will field questions from the audience and I will bring through channeled messages from our guides on request regarding those questions. And obviously the topic would essentially be something about ascension. So I have some fun things in the works I'm really excited about. Moving forward, though, in this podcast episode and covering those themes that I mentioned, the first one actually came through as I was channeling a part of my multidimensional soul integration practitioner training content. So this is a semi-on-demand course where I pre-recorded lessons, activations to train people and to calibrate them to be able to administer multidimensional soul integration as a modality. Now, it's been really fascinating as I have essentially channeled those messages and those lessons. It's definitely not gone the way I thought it would. I'm a teacher. I have a background in teaching and curriculum development. And so I know, like, when I sit down to write curriculum, I've got an outline, I've got it all set out. And I kind of did that for this. But what would happen is as I was recording, literally as I was recording in the middle of doing these lessons, Spirit would drop in and say, hey, there's a being or a guide that wants to step forward and offer an activation or a message. And so I have some beautiful channeled messages plopped right in the middle of these just like facts and ins and outs of multidimensional soul integration. And one came through, which was really interesting. What happened is a collective of guides came in and provided a guided meditation, like I said. And during the meditation, they also offered a message. And I actually made a reel out of this. So if you go back in my Instagram, you can look at my reel and you can see that this message was about releasing programs of solitary ascension or growth. And it basically, to me, it came across as many of us, because of like the witch wound. I feel like there's another wound about gathering. I absolutely feel that. And I know lots of you probably feel that too. Like in the past, maybe we've experienced lives where we were punished for coming together and gathering. But I feel like as we release and heal from that, we are going to begin to gather not only like online and virtually, but also in person more and more and more. And so essentially what happened with this particular message that came through was releasing an archetype of solitude, of the solitary sojourner. That's the exact words that they used. Now, I would have just left it at that, posted it as a reel and said, oh, I've kind of let my audience know that that's the thing. And then what happened over the last week is that person after person in my sessions mentioned feelings of loneliness and being alone and being on this journey alone. And then I knew it was time for us to get proactive about gathering. And I really feel strongly that this not only has to do with, again, virtual gathering, but in-person support systems. And it's not just about gathering to learn. It's not like gathering in a classroom to learn from a teacher, although that can be part of it. It's about forming networks, forming support systems of light workers in a more tangible and expansive way than we ever have before. And it's about doing it very intentionally. Now, I want to take a moment and honor those of you who are already doing this. I know there are a lot of people out there who have felt this same way and who have taken steps to facilitate groups, to facilitate places, events, retreats, where people can come together and do just that. In fact, over the 4/4 portal, I was gathered with a beautiful group of people, and the theme for our retreat was the Star Mothers. And essentially what came through was Star Mothers Reunion. And that's what we called this gathering of friends. And so we ended up coming together, and what a beautiful place and space and energy that came through of just support and love. And what came in after that is something really big that I'm not going to go into too much detail about in this podcast episode. But it's really an entirely new, almost brand, if you will, or energetic container, aside from activations with JJ, where we are networking and gathering in groups that are connected with the Star Mothers. And as you know, I also just launched my Star Mothers course. If you didn't get into the live version, we will be offering that as an on-demand course, by the way. But anyhow, it's exciting. I just wanted to take a second and share that with you. So keep on the lookout for more about that. Moving forward with these themes, I want to tap into the idea of dreams. Again, over the last little while, dreams have been coming up again and again and again in people. What they'll do is they'll come to me and say, I had a dream about such and such, and I don't know what it means, or there's a lot of stuff coming up in my dreams from my past. And I had a really interesting interaction with one of my clients. We were in a session together, and they mentioned that they felt that these dreams were allowing them to bring to completion relationships and contracts with people from the past. As many of you know, in order to shift into new timelines, it's important for us to close the circle, as it were, to come to a sense of finality with regards to certain contracts, essentially releasing contracts, really. And I feel like if you are having that experience, because I have been, and I didn't know what it was about. When this person shared this experience with me, I was like, oh my goodness, I've been having the same thing happen to me in my dreams. These weird random people from that I didn't even know very well or weren't really like big highlights of my life are coming up. And Spirit's like, oh, you know how when you close your circles on your little fitness apps, you're closing these circles, you're closing out these timelines in these dreams. And so I'd love to know from you, if you have an experience with that, please, please, please drop in. If you're on YouTube, drop into the comment section. I would love to see people sharing about that, because I know that it's being experienced by many, many people. So that's, again, a theme. Just watch out for it. It's maybe to give you a little clarity on why it's happening. Another topic that is associated with my upcoming Conscious Relationships workshop is surrounding healing your inner child and inner teenager. And not only healing your inner child and inner teenager, but allowing them to have more of a voice in your life. And I know that can feel like, ooh, do I want that? Because a lot of times when we think of our inner child, we think of our wounded inner child. Or our inner teenager, we think of our wounded inner teenager. Now, many of you know that TikTok came out with a filter that basically morphed your face into a teenage version of yourself. And if you get on that particular tag and you look at some of those videos, you will see that many, many people were saying that they were experiencing healing just by looking at themselves. In fact, there were actual TikTok videos of people speaking love and encouragement to that version of themselves that they were looking at in the video. Now, this is an example of how AI and technology is helping us with healing. A lot of us, I know, are scared of AI, and we're hearing words and thoughts being thrown around about how AI is going to take over and it's bad and evil. But I've told you in various ways, especially in my 5D business activation workshop, that we are going to work with AI as a form of ascension. And the AI version that we can connect with is the 5D AI and above. There's even higher density AI, higher dimensional AI that we can work with and connect with. And this app, it's a filter, not an app, but the filter with our teenage self, it uses AI to look at your facial features and create a version of yourself that's younger, where we can literally have a conversation and tell our inner teenager the things that we never heard. Now, my partner, Michael, who I'm going to have an interview with that I'll add in at the end of this, you'll see he comments on that as well. Essentially, again, with this inner child and inner teenager healing, it's not just about healing them. It's about holding space for the healed and higher vibrational version of them to have a voice in our life. Because not only are we looking at them from the stance of, oh, we have to take care of you, we are allowing them to take care of us. We are allowing them to give us life and passion and zest. And those versions of ourselves, remember what it was like to have dreams as a teenager of what you were going to do with your life. Remember what it was like as a child to step into a realm of fantasy, into the sky's the limit, to just let yourself soar. Those are the energies that are going to propel us into the new earth. This has been coming up over and over again in my gatherings. I have been calling in the inner child more and more and more. And my guides are just saying, call in the inner child, call in the inner child, bring in the inner child, interact with them, allow them to step forward and lead out at this time of ascension. So it's a beautiful, beautiful topic to consider. And again, if you want to dive in a little bit deeper with me, be sure to sign up for our Intro to Conscious Relationships workshop that we're doing on April 16th. The link for that is just below. All right, there's one last theme that I want to cover. It's a very fascinating one, and it's very simple as well. And you heard me mention it as I introduced this podcast episode, and that is the theme of trust and surrender. Those are two companion energies that we are being invited to make room for in our lives. It's really interesting because what has happened is over the last few weeks, I've had a lot of people feel kind of stuck. There's a lot of people who are feeling frustrated, who are very unsure. And what has come through for them, and they can be at different places in their ascension journey. Some of these people are what I would consider to be very advanced. They've done a lot of work. They've received a lot of teachings and a lot of healing, but they're still feeling stuck too. And Spirit has said to bring through, and their guides have come through. Like this has come in many, many channels, to trust and surrender. This is all about leaning into your inner wisdom and then just letting go. So I'm really feeling like I want to facilitate some guided meditations, and I'll be recording some later this week where you can come into that real energy of trust and surrender, where I can bring through some light language to help activate that, to help you feel safe enough to do that, to release any programs that you might have running that cause you not to trust yourself or cause you to be on the defensive mode, in order for us to take the steps that will allow us to have a quantum leap into the new Gaia. We are being asked to do just that, to trust more and to surrender. And who are we being asked to trust? We're being asked to trust first and foremost ourselves, to trust our intuition. That's real empowerment, isn't it? We're not being asked to trust outside sources before we trust ourselves. We're being asked to cultivate all of that within our inner scape inside of us. So just a few things to think about as you head in to these upcoming weeks. I hope that something I mentioned resonates with you, and I'm excited to co-create with you in lots of different ways, including the Conscious Relationships Workshop and a few other offerings I have that I'll mention at the very end of the podcast. If you're a visual person and you want to see what my offerings are like by sight, I encourage you to go over to my website, activationswithjj.com. On the front page, I usually feature some of my special offerings, things that are like not on my regular schedule. And then I have also my gatherings, the list of my weekly gatherings that I do virtually. Okay, so now we are heading into the portion of this episode where I will be sharing with you a snippet, a little soundbite, a few moments of an interview that I did with my partner, Michael Brighton, who is, I would like put it this way, stepping into my world a little bit more. Michael has a background in psychology and education, many, many years, decades even, of working with people. And it's funny because Michael has been doing this longer than I have. And that's the funny part about our journeys, is that he has really helped me in my path And it's interesting how we complement each other. I feel that what he offers, and as we blend our sort of approaches, it's very much a balanced and grounded approach. So I'm bringing in a little bit more of the enlightenment, the woo-woo, the ascension aspects, and he's bringing in this real life, real straightforward energy. And it's very grounded. It's very earthy. If you come to our conscious relationships workshop, you will see how we interact with each other in that way. And a lot of people, as we've given different presentations and courses and workshops over the years, have really noticed that about us. And of course, being in it, I'm like, I don't really pay attention. But I feel like it adds a really well-rounded container. And so again, this is mostly him presenting a little bit about his philosophy, his approach. As you tap in, notice the energy between the two of us as I'm holding space for him to share. And I hope that some of what he mentions can bring through some aha moments for you. Once we're done with this little soundbite, please make sure to stay on because I have some exciting announcements to make about some offerings I have coming up in the next 2 weeks. So without any further ado, here is a part of my interview with Michael Brighton. What's happening is a lot of people are coming to me and they are expressing issues with their relationships. They're talking about how they feel like maybe their partner isn't moving as fast as they are, or they're not on the same vibration that they are. And they're really trying to find a way to keep things, moving and to continue to be in the relationship. But they're really having a hard time figuring out how. What kind of insights would you have for someone in that position?
One of the things that I really like to focus on and make sure is really one of the top tier focuses is on your awareness. How do we heighten our awareness? How do we increase this ability to understand what you're going through? What am I going through? How am I going through this?
Right.
Is this taking too long? Is this moving forward at a faster pace than I like? And then you add in a relationship on top of that. How come they're not valuing the same things that I am? And so that's maybe one of the things that I would look into is what are the things that you value?
Sure.
What are the things that your partner values? And then come up with, an activity or a time where you can communicate that.
Yeah. So communication is absolutely one of the keys here. I think, I'm sure you've seen that. I've seen it too for us.
Right. And another question I get a lot of times is what if they don't care, or I want them to care about what I'm going through? And that's a tough one because that actually should be a window into who we are. If we're saying that should be a window into what you're going through and how you're going through something. Do you need them to care? How much do you need them to care? And really what it comes down to, kind of the solution first, is if you are seeing that there's a discrepancy there, most partners want you to be happy, want to be a part of your life, but maybe they just don't know how.
Right.
And so helping them understand.
Yeah. And that goes right along with the idea of keeping open lines of communication. Because we assume a lot in relationships. And sometimes just depending on how we were raised, our trauma and that type of thing, we may potentially avoid discussing things and just expect, that the other person is going to be able to read our mind. And that is not always the case. Okay, so switching gears a little bit here, I wanted to see if you could drop in and talk to us briefly about your experience working with inner child healing. It's a theme that has come up over and over again with many of the people that I work with. And so I feel like it's important to address. And I know we're also going to be talking about this in our workshop. So just anything that you want to share about that.
Well, this idea of healing trauma from our childhood, from our teenage years, from our developmental years, is a little sensitive. Actually, it's very sensitive. So some people are able to revisit traumatic memories and then work through those. Others aren't, and that's okay. We're all at a different, time in our life, and we're all at a different space. But the idea is here's an example. A lot of people may have gone through this experience where they've had a parent just didn't quite seem to see the positive, and they were put down a lot. And so that's a traumatic event that can create traumatic beliefs or negative beliefs in us.
Yeah.
But by revisiting our childhood or our adolescence or at a different period of time in our life, we can encourage ourself. The thing is to go through this experience in detail to then your previous version of yourself accepts that encouragement and then basically creates a whole new timeline where you were an encouraged individual instead of a discouraged or put down individual. Well, time is not linear. Time is circular. So at any point in time, that new previous version of yourself, the one that got encouraged by your present self, now can be accessed for anything.
Yeah.
So this work is so powerful and can be used in so many different ways. It's quite enlightening. I could go into a little bit more detail at another time, but it's pretty cool.
All right, so there you have it. That was just a short portion of an interview that I did with my own partner, Michael Brighton, to warm us up and get us ready for what we will be doing at our Intro to Conscious Relationships workshop on Sunday, April 16th at 9 a.m. Pacific. It's an hour-and-a-half long workshop. We'll be covering mainly just topics that we want to give you that will help you right away. We really want to try to stay where we can give you practical advice. I will be doing some activations. Michael also has a background in mindfulness and meditation. And so he and I will both be kind of doing like our part of the meditative and the mindfulness and the real inner work. But he'll also be, again, providing much of this practical advice. One of the most valuable parts of the workshop will be the last 30 minutes where we will simply hold space for everyone to come in that is participating and ask questions that apply. And of course, you'll be doing this in front of a group, but I always feel like a lot of people have questions, and I do this. This has been a theme for me, ask questions that are going to apply to everyone in that group. And so bring your questions, bring your openness about moving to next level with how you approach relationships, whether they be romantic, whether they be familial, whether they be work relationships, or even your relationship with yourself, because it is all intertwined. And that's something that we're really passionate about. So I'm excited to gather with you. And again, I appreciate your support coming in as we just launch our work together. It's really been fascinating, as I mentioned earlier, just how we've been together for so long. We've co-created many different ways. And this is our first foray into the blend of the spiritual with the psychology. All right, my friends, we've come to the end of this podcast episode. I'm so grateful that you have taken a part of your day and spent it here listening and co-creating with me. To run through some of the events I have coming up, there are a few I want to highlight especially. I have all my regular weekly gatherings, but there is a very special event coming up Saturday, April 15th. That is my Avalon past life regression. I'll be connecting with Merlin energy, King Arthur, Queen Guinevere. We've got Lady of the Lake energy. I feel Morrigan coming through, Celtic Druid energy. All kinds of incredible experiences are going to come through. I know it at that particular past life regression experience. Now, speaking of past life regressions, I'm kind of in this groove right now because that's going to happen on the 16th of April, but on the 22nd of April, I am offering a blended in-person and virtual event. This will be happening in Los Angeles, so if you're local, I would love to see you there in person. We're doing an actual day retreat. But for those of you who are not close to LA and cannot make it all the way there, part of that retreat will be dedicated to a Lemurian past life regression experience. We'll be live streaming it from that location, and we'll be taking those in person and via Zoom on a journey through a Lemurian past life regression. A lot of this Lemurian energy I'm ramping up for our Lemurian New Golden Age of Lemuria retreat in Kauai, Hawaii in September of 2023. I will be co-hosting this with Queenie of Reiki and Flow. She's also co-hosting the day retreat with me. All of the information about that can be found below. So those are kind of the two highlighted events. Obviously, past life regressions is a theme right now, isn't it? I'm really into doing those, and I know that they're going to be incredible experiences. So if you feel drawn or connected to either Avalon or Lemuria, and by the way, as a side note, those two are connected as well, so you might feel drawn to both. This could be a really fun and expansive energy for you. My friends, again, thank you so much for being supportive, for being here. If you have questions and you want me to answer those on my next Ascension message, be sure to drop them as an Apple review in that section of the Apple podcast or on a comment of YouTube. As always, I am sending you so much love and reminding you that I am you and you are me and we are we. Until next time.